All right, so today's video is about prokaryotes. Now, it's a science teacher party because joining me today are two of my friends from U of I that we were in science education classes together. So I'll let them introduce themselves.
Mr. Sweeney.
Okay.
And Mr. Klikazewski.
Yes. He goes by Mr. K also, but I told him he can't say that. So, hey, Mr. Sweeney, would you like to explain why you have such a glorious mustache going on right now?
Yeah, so I've been growing a beard for a couple of years now, and we just had a fundraiser at the school to raise money for after prom party at the school, and one of the fundraisers was to raise money. Whoever got the most money had to do a stupid stunt, and ours was to shave our mustaches. Or shave our beards and leave the mustaches.
Nice. It looks
It's a good look on it.
Very impressive.
Yeah.
So, anyway, here we go. So, do you guys know, first of all, what the word prokaryote means?
I believe a prokaryote is a single cell lacking a nucleus.
Very good. Yeah, it does have a nucleus.
I know they are not eukaryotes.
He's the chemist of the group. So anyway, yeah, prokaryotes, as you guys know, are organisms that don't have a nucleus in their cells. Now, we've talked that there are two domains of prokaryotes, the archaea and the bacteria. The difference being bacteria have something called peptidoglycan in their cell walls. Now, prokaryotes tend to live in colonies, which is a large group, and they all descend from one bacterial cell and grow over time. I have a little video that shows how these colonies can show up from just one cell.
Well, Mr. K,
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard archaea. What is that?
Archaea?
Yeah.
It's the, did you get taught the old way? Where they had Kingdom Monera?
Well, I mean, that seems like it's something that was recently discovered.
It was, yes. Although, yeah, we've talked about that in class.
Oh.
Yeah, archaea, that's now in the textbooks. I know you're not teaching bio now, but yeah, archaea is now in the textbooks.
Yeah.
It's not Monera anymore. So yeah, archaea is that you got domain archaea, domain bacteria, and then you got the eukaryotes.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so there are a few shapes that prokaryotes can be. So you have the cocci, the bacilli, and the spirilla. And I remember spirilla really well because it looks like a spiral. So we call bacilli rod-shaped and cocci are round. So like strep throat is streptococcus, and it's a round-shaped bacteria. But anyway, so some things that all bacteria have are, and we're talking archaea as well, they have a cell wall and a cell membrane. They have DNA, sometimes an extra loop of DNA called a plasmid, and then they all have ribosomes. So those are the three minimal requirements for as far as cell components for life. Okay. Now, a few other structures you see on there are what are called pili, and they're short little appendages. They're those blue little sticks coming off there. They can grip stuff. They can help the bacteria move, and also they can sometimes help the bacteria reproduce. And then they can also have flagella, which is the long whip-like thing you see there.
Is that asexual reproduction?
With the pili?
Yes.
The pili, it's tough to define because it acts like sexual reproduction. You could call it sexual reproduction, yeah. It's not completely asexual. The pili help it transfer its DNA to another organism.
Yeah.
But we think of sexual reproduction as having a cell from one organism and a cell from another. Since bacterial cells are just one cell, it doesn't quite fit that definition, but you can think of it.
It's a gray area.
Yeah, sort of like that. All right, so and here's kind of a bigger picture with all those structures. You can put those on your notes if you want, but I'm going to move along. So the most common way, going back to reproduction, of bacteria reproducing is called binary fission. It's asexual. It's when one cell divides into two identical cells. And this is what it looks like. Ooh, this is a time-lapse photo. This isn't in real time. But you can see how one bacteria, or actually there were two bacteria there, results in so many bacteria over a short period of time, they can divide in about an hour.
This reminds me of the scene from the movie Evolution. David Duchovny.
Going way back, huh?
David Duchovny.
Head and Shoulders.
I never saw that movie. So, it's funny, old movies get referenced in these videos all the time. The kids never seen them. Anyway. So, going back to your question, though, about the pili and sexual reproduction, there is a process called conjugation. What happens in conjugation is when one can extend what's called its pilus, which is a specialized pili, towards another. They connect, and its DNA can actually move over to the other bacteria, and that's called conjugation. Now, another type, which actually we're going to, oh no, we're not going to work with this in class, but we've talked about this in class, is what's called transferation. Now what happens here is bacteria can actually take up DNA fragments from the environment. So if a bacteria cell dies, say it's on your hand, you use what's it called?
Antiseptic.
Hand sanitizer. Thank you. This is why you're here. So use hand sanitizer. It kills some of the DNA on your kills some of the cells on your hand, the bacterial cells. Well, that DNA there can be soaked up by other bacteria that might have survived the hand sanitizer.
What would the purpose of that be? Why would they want to do that?
In order to gain new DNA to give them an advantage to survive their environment. Okay, it's not, you can't ever tell what that new DNA is going to offer them in terms of survival, in terms of adaptations. So anyway, now let's say bacteria gets in a situation where growth conditions are not favorable. Say it gets really, really cold outside, or it gets really, really dry. Well, what can happen is a little section of that cell can thicken up, and a wall forms around the DNA. And this is called an endospore. And this allows the bacteria to survive for a really, really long time. Now, gentlemen, do you remember back in 2001 there was a scare with a certain bacteria called anthrax?
I do. People
Yes.
were mailing it in the postal service.
Yeah. So what anthrax is a bacteria. And it was a white powder that everyone was afraid of that was in those envelopes. So what that was in a lab, someone had taken the anthrax bacteria, which is something that infects like the hooves of different, mainly cows is where you see it a lot. It can infect other animals. But anyway, they're making endospores of that in a lab, putting that in envelopes and mailing it. And what was the worst way you can get?
Breathing it in.
Yeah, breathing in, right? So the favorable conditions here for those endospores were if you breathe in that endospore and it gets into your lungs, which are very moist, suddenly that's a great environment for bacteria to grow in because it's moist, 98.6 degrees, so that bacteria colonize those people's lungs, and it causes extreme scarring and stuff like that. And yeah, that's how anthrax works. Kind of.
You know, Mr. K, I also was hearing that they were looking into how resilient endospores are, and looking at if they can actually survive in outer space as a way to colonize another planet, which is pretty.
Do you know what they found?
Enlighten me.
Oh no, I don't.
No,
I was asking you if you
no.
knew.
I mean, it's one of the ideas of how this planet got colonized with life is maybe it came as endospores from an asteroid. Yeah,
there's some theories out there that actually life on Earth came from an asteroid hitting Mars and rock from Mars coming with endospores to Earth. Not a ton of evidence for that one. It's more
of just an idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't even go as far as calling it a theory because theories generally have some evidence or support.
I'm using the loose definition here.
Yeah. But you can't rule that idea out necessarily. It is possible rocks from Mars have come to here after asteroid collisions.
I mean, there's evidence of water on Mars, so
yeah.
that could have been life.
And that's where that stems from, is because a lot of people try to explore ways that life could have been on Mars. So anyway, now I find prokaryotes and particularly bacteria tend to get a bad rap. We tend to think of them as like, oh, E. coli, that's bad for you, or strep throat, that makes you sick. But here's some good stuff that prokaryotes do for us. So they're decomposers in the environment. So if something dies out in the woods, okay, say it's a squirrel or something, if there were not decomposers to break down the body, that dead squirrel would stay there forever, just a dead carcass, okay? And that energy can't be returned back to the environment, okay? So that's extremely important. Also, there are a lot of autotrophic prokaryotes. What does autotrophic mean?
They create their own energy.
Right, yeah. Good job. So,
Kobe.
So autotrophic prokaryotes can be the bottom of a lot of food chains, especially even in deep. So there are archaea that live deep in the ocean, near ocean vents. They can get energy from those little mini volcanoes underneath the ocean, and that's the start of a lot of food chains. That's why fish are able to survive down there. Also, this is extremely important. We need nitrogen. It's a really important chemical. Now, most of our atmosphere is nitrogen, but believe it or not, us breathing in nitrogen, that does nothing. We can't use nitrogen at all.
Very few organisms can take nitrogen out of the air.
Except
particularly legumes.
Yeah. So, it's actually the bacteria that live on legumes that can take it out. Yeah.
Just I believe it's the bacteria by the roots of the plants that do this, right?
Yep. Yeah, the rhizobium there.
Yeah.
Also, and I skipped that cyanobacteria. Those are the autotrophic prokaryotes. But anyway, I try to cover the pictures as we go through. But anyway, so also there are a lot of prokaryotes that live inside your digestive system. and help you digest food. Not only that, there's some food that's based on bacteria. So there's a bacteria called lactobacillus that is used really, really heavily in producing yogurt. When you eat yogurt, that's a lot of bacterial cells. And actually, the reason it's really good for you is because those bacterial cells are particularly good at helping you digest food. So it's good for your digestive system to eat yogurt.
Like those Activia commercials.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, they try to really advertise that nowadays. There's a lot more good uses for prokaryotes, but I could do a whole hour video talking about
just
this.
a quick little side fact about the gut bacteria in your body is there's actually more gut bacterial cells in your body than there are cells that make up you. Which is kind of weird to think about. Is like you have cells making up, your nervous system, your skin, everything, but there's more gut bacteria cells, and that's because prokaryotes' size is so much smaller than eukaryotic cells.
You mentioned skin too. There's lots of bacteria living on your skin in a good way. There's bacteria that causes acne, but mainly that's because the bacteria that was in your skin has been overtaken by bad bacteria. But speaking of bad bacteria, most of the now I've been saying bacteria, I should be saying prokaryotes, but bad prokaryotes are mostly in domain bacteria. We don't know a ton of archaea that can cause disease, although it doesn't mean they don't exist. We're just not that far along in discovering that. We've only really defined archaea as a separate domain for only...
Plus, how often do archaea come in contact with animals to infect anyway?
There's a few small amount, but not to the amount of bacteria. So anyway, we call bad bacteria pathogens. In order to treat pathogens, we use what are called antibiotics. You guys have probably been prescribed antibiotics at some point. Or you can actually use vaccines for bacteria as well. We tend to think of vaccines as only for viruses, but there are vaccines that exist for certain bacteria. I believe tetanus being one of them. Now, in order to actually prevent bad bacteria, you can physically remove it. That's what washing your hands does. Hey, Sarah. Hey. We're on the last slide.
You want to make a guest appearance really fast?
So in order to actually prevent these bad bacteria from hurting you, you can physically remove them. This is what washing your hands does. Soap helps remove the bacteria. Okay. Now temperature can be really effective in fighting bacteria. So really low temperatures, like in your freezer or your fridge, can slow the growth of bacteria. That's why stuff eventually does go bad. It doesn't kill the bacteria in the fridge. Or high temperatures can kill bacteria. That's why we cook our food usually.
Autoclave?
Yeah, well, an autoclave is used to sterilize bacteria because it gets to a really, really high temperature and it just kills it off. Now, disinfectants and antiseptics are also things you could use. So disinfectants are chemicals that generally aren't used on your skin to kill bacteria. And antiseptics refers to something that can be used on your skin to kill bacteria. So like mouthwash, I guess, would be an antiseptic or hand sanitizer. So thanks for joining me, my teaching friends. Ms. Hahn here walked in late. So yes, there's actually 4 science teachers at the science teacher party. But anyway, enjoy your burrito.